Alright, this is John Bystrom. I'm in Rockford, Illinois. Here at the corner of North 2nd and Market Street. I'm going to be surveying the damages of the flooding last night here. We did have torrential rains. However, the people across the street did not get flooded, and somehow we get constantly flooded over here. With me are a couple of characters from screenplay I wrote called The Discount Detective. I'm here with Jack Ford and his sidekick Oscar, and we're going to be talking a little bit about both things. Like I said, there'll be color commentary, and The Discount Detective is about a City of Rockford cartel trying to steal this property from a guy that moved back to his hometown where it was supposedly safe to raise kids. Well, how do you spell raise? And what he found was that there was a criminal cartel. This is the screenplay I'm talking about. Back in 1993, called The Discount Detective. He found the criminal cartel wanted to target the good people in town, and he became their target because they wanted to steal his property. In the screenplay, the criminal cartel is being run by the City of Rockford, which is not very far from the truth. Because in 1978, while I was in high school, I got lured into this property by the campaign manager of the mayors for the next 40 years, John McNamara, Charles Box, Doug Scott, Larry Morrissey de facto. Even though he was an independent, he was secretly a Democrat. In 2002, Tom Meyer, who was campaign manager for all those mayors, his agent took me to court. 2002, Larry Morrissey became my attorney, and Larry Morrissey missed the deadline on my evidence, which left me without evidence to prove up my case. Although I had all the evidence to do it, he didn't enter it into the court record. This is the Faust Hotel. And if you know what a Faustian pact is, then you'll see the irony here. Because I live in the shadow of the Faustian Hotel. And what they did to me was a Faustian pact. It's also called RICO, and there is no statute of limitation on RICO, and that's why they're so bold about what they're doing. Because when they redid the parking lot here, the inadequate drains that they left has always been flooding here. Excuse me. And last night was the worst that I've seen. But I've owned this building for 40 years, and in 40 years, the only other time that it flooded was the year before, or the year after they redid the drains here. And like I say, it was inadequate because we got flooded on both sides of the street. Now, in The Discount Detective, in the end, the main characters start a weekly newspaper. And by coincidence, I met Frank Shearer a month after I finished the script, and I gave him a copy, and he said he had to put it down because he was spooked out. He said it sounded like the story of his life, which I gotta say, it kind of was. Frank passed away a year and a half ago, and I am now the sole owner of the Rock River Times, although it is not in my possession. So the damage that they do here to me, the flooding, is in order to impede me from taking my position with full authority as a publisher and editor of the Rock River Times. I'm the former assistant editor. I helped Frank build the newspaper. And what we did is uncover the pedophiles that run this city and county. The chief judge of the circuit court was raping 14-year-old girls. At least one that signed an affidavit that claimed what he was doing. So when we printed the stories, they came after me and arrested me, threatened to beat me up, of course. The guy that threatened to beat me up is now the jailer. He lost his bid for the county sheriff, but he did get jailer. So with the proceeds of this property, we bought this property over here, Brownstone, and the house. This is the oldest house in Rockford. It's called the Posson House, built, I believe, 1842. He was a cooper, which is a barrel maker. So in 1986, we bought these two properties. Turns out with the lawsuit that I was the only investor in the properties. I had invested $50,000 by 1983, and my partner, who was the agent of Tom Meyer at City Hall, he had taken my name right off the checking account with the building of Chase Bank right there. See that bank? Well, it was called First National when we got the mortgages, and then it changed to Bank One. And Richard Bastian III then took my name right off the account. They took my name off all the records of the partnership, which means it looked like they were going to kill me. So if I hadn't started a weekly newspaper, I'd be dead now. But because I did, yeah, I'm here. So I thank God for that, by the way, to no skill of my own. But it's the unions, not this particular union, but there are unions involved that sabotage people in town. They work with the cartel of the city. And Tom Meyer, whose son is currently the new city attorney for the City of Rockford, he's a city attorney for Tom McNamara, who's named after Tom Meyer. Now people go, oh come on, that can't be true. People have no idea what goes on in this town. It's called a secret. And there's many people over the years that have written books about it. 1984 is one of them. Brave New World is another. An Animal Farm is another. So to suggest that it's a huge theory that there are people in the world that want to destroy others and may worship a Luciferian goat now and then, you need to do some homework. Right here is my favorite restaurant in town, and the best restaurant in town, called the Irish Rose. Back in the 1920s, when the heat in Chicago got too tough for Al Capone, he would come to the Irish Rose and hang out. I don't know where he would stay. He may have stayed at the Faust Hotel. But he did hang out there at the Irish Rose. If you get a chance to come to Rockford, Illinois, the best food in town. The owner was my first tenant when I renovated the property here, and I left for Argentina for an LDS mission. While I was gone, they stole $7,000 from me. I should say they lost $7,000 because they had condemned the building. Because after I spent $17,000 on new plumbing and new electricity, Tom Meyer and his henchmen at the City Hall Building Department, somebody called the health department, condemned the property, said that we were renting to people without bathrooms, which was a complete lie. We only had like one tenant. And the only reason he was there was because somebody from church begged us to give him an apartment because his house had burned down. So out of the goodness of us, we're renting to a guy in an apartment we weren't ready to rent. But he said he wanted to rent it. Although it did have running water and we had it shut off, I suppose, now and then when the plumbing was being done, they said we weren't renting to people without bathrooms. So that's called bait and switch. It's affinity fraud because the person from church that was involved in this was the banker, largest stockholder of Amcor Bank, who loaned the mortgage for Concord Commons, which is where Tom Meyer got his political authority, because people who live in public housing are slaves. And what they do is they come over there with buses and they load them up for the votes. And it's not really illegal because you could call it a bribe, the way they buy them lunch and, groom them all day long. But the thing about it is, maybe that's not such a bad thing, but it's the agenda. The agenda for Tom Meyer, the local city cartel, and the local Mormon cartel is to steal everybody's property. I'll be quite honest. The Mormon guys that are targeting me go to the top of the Mormon church. The son-in-law of the next in line for the Mormon church, Dallin Oaks, his son-in-law secretly owns my house. He did that when the City of Rockford took me to court in 2002 to 2006, falsely accused me of taking money that didn't belong to me. In the process, Larry Morrissey withheld the evidence, and in 2006 I asked my Mormon friends, one of whom was a returned missionary who I thought I taught real estate to and was now a millionaire. Well, the bait and switch was, if I buy 6 properties from their real estate team, who Jack Ward was the secret head of it. If I buy these 7 properties from them, they would sell this one back to me, which is the one I paid off in 1993, which afforded me to be able to work for nothing at the Rock River Times and help Frank start a newspaper, which is why I ended up as the only shareholder today in 2018. So my LDS friend stepped in to help me out, except it was a bait and switch. It's a complete fraud. Because then the city sent over their people. I'd say about 3/4 of the people that I rented to had some connection to local government, because that's quite frankly all you have anymore in town for employment is government. So they move in, they damage the place, they don't pay rent, they create a nuisance, they call the building department, the building department comes over and cites me. So this tag team has been going on for 3 years, intensely. It's been going on, of course, the setup and all that. See, financial crimes and white-collar crimes are just like the KKK. They hide under sheets and use proxies to do their dirty work. Think about it. The KKK was founded by the same group that founded the Union Pacific Railroad, who also created the modern corporation with the Santa Clara decision of 1886. So, here we go. Here we go. We got an interview. What do you need?
Oh, no interview.
Oh, come on.
I'm saying, did you post that flood video?
Which blood video?
There was a flood video.
Oh, flood. Yes. Yes, I did. It's on there. That's me. Yep. Take care. So this local Mormon cartel, which I didn't realize that Jack Ward was involved until a year ago when somebody accidentally sent me some paperwork. Oops. I guess I could have looked at the Secretary of State's office, but the paperwork will do. Well, since then, knowing how dirty Jack Ward is, I started tracking down Dallin Oaks. And if you know what Dallin Oaks, his resume reads like a who's who of CIA boys. What I found about Dallin Oaks is that I believe he belongs to what George Herbert Walker Bush designed as the Mormon Mafia when they were trying to take over the Hughes Corporation and Howard Hughes back in 1959. But also, David Kennedy, who was chairman of Chicago Continental Bank in Chicago, became chairman in 1959, and his partners were the Vatican Bank. They're the ones that introduced heroin to America. A couple of their affiliate banks were Franklin National Bank in New York, BCCI, Bank of Credit and Commerce International, which was famous in the Iran-Contra. See, people don't, we're brainwashed, we're gaslighted by the media every night to tell you that your government does not traffic in children. Your government does not traffic in cocaine. Your government does not traffic in heroin. Your local news media, we have, our local news media are kids right out of college. They're nice people, they're amicable and everything else, but they don't really know the history of what's going on here. I just found out I'll be getting my newspaper back. So all the damage that they've done to me over the past 3-4 years, when I wasn't at the paper before Frank died, all the damage that they've done to me, all of the little things, all of the big things, all add up to one thing. It leads back to Dallin Oaks. Dallin Oaks was a Chicago state's attorney back in the 1960s when David M. Kennedy was trafficking, or I should say was laundering the money for the CIA and the mob. Kennedy's partners were the Vatican Bank. In 1978, the Pope was murdered by the group that controlled Kennedy, the Vatican Bank officers, which were Archbishop Paul Marcinkus in Chicago and their Italian bank partners, Michele Sindona and Roberto Calvi from Italy. In 1974, the Italians got bright and they busted them. David M. Kennedy had church diplomacy, or I should say diplomatic immunity, and he also had NATO diplomatic immunity. which means whatever he did, he was never going to be held accountable for. Well, by coincidence, NATO are the ones that fund all the Islamic terrorists. Okay? So the cocaine that we see here in Rockford, that you see the crack people going around, losing their lives, losing their everything to pay for the crack, that money ends up paying for terrorism. Okay? People are so concentrated on what's going on in Washington, all the actions in the local scene. Tip O'Neill said back in the 80s, all politics is local. And yet somehow the CIA's got everybody focused on Washington. Mueller and Comey is the only story in town. I love some of these commentators on YouTube, but it sickens me to realize that Trump is one person. He can't do everything. We're going to have to start doing something rather than sitting on our heinies talking about something that somebody else talked about and didn't do anything about. I mean, to a point, I can see it. But the only thing people cover, these guys never cover any primary information that reveals anything new. If you want to defeat the Satanists, the pedophile traffickers, you're going to have to start revealing some primary information, some first-hand information. Do your own investigations. We're going to have to create teams of people that can feed those who dare put their face to the camera. So, let me show you what the flood did. Back in 1979, when I was still planning on studying architecture, I designed this place in order to be better than the way it was. And as you can see, need I tell you what water damage does? This is what water damage does. There you go. I guess the refrigerator got cleaned. So, let's see. Water was coming right through the windows here. You can see that. See that? Now again, when they redid these drains outside, this is what's caused this. They redid the drains outside in 2006 or so, 2005. And I believe it's intentional because Tim Hansen was under Larry Morrissey's jurisdiction. Tim Hansen was hired by Larry Morrissey, who was the one that withheld the evidence in my case, and then he became mayor. Well, in 2002, let me tell you one more story. Back in 2002, when they first came to take me to court and steal $500,000 from me, everything that I had earned from 1978 to 2002, they stole in court with the future mayor of Rockford, Larry Morrissey. They sued me allegedly for taking money that didn't belong to me. Okay. Now I installed the water or the washer and dryer hookup back in 1984. After Larry Morrissey became my attorney, all of a sudden my partner Doug Bruno announced to the court that he had never ever deposited the laundry money from 1984 to 2002, and he's suing me. All right? Before he sued me, it was about May of 2002. I came down here and there was glass and nails. Whoops, I guess that's a window. There was glass and nails in this drain down here. The cartel had they had a tenant living downstairs, and so I had no control. He'd come over here anytime. His entrance was right over here. So he came over here and there was like seven water issues. There was a puncture in a copper pipe. There was two leaks on the water heater, like somebody had shaken it. There was glass and nails in the drain, and there was at least 7 issues. Oh yeah, and the other side of the apartment there was also a galvanized. Was it galvanized? No, I think that was copper too. It was actually a puncture in the copper tube. So that day when I came down here and found this all flooded, I was really pissed off. So I had to go to the bank to cash my check. When I got to the bank, they wanted to charge me a $5 fee. I was in no mood to pay a $5 fee, especially to a bank that I had just read about was a cocaine launderer. So I asked for the bank manager. He came over. I told him that he had a lot of nerve charging me $5 to cash a check at his bank when I knew they were money launderers for cocaine and drugs. Well, he offered to reverse the charges, and for the next, what is it now, 15 years, 16 years, yeah, about 16 years now, the Rock River Times was never charged that $5 fee that everybody gets charged. So as I'm leaving the bank, I was still a little bit pissed off. And so I looked back at the bank manager, Brian, and I looked back at him. I said, "I'll be investigating your bank." And he shoves me. So at that point I said, "Well, let's check the surveillance. Let's check the surveillance tape." Well, we went back in the manager's office, and of course I called for the cops to come there. They never showed up because the banks work for the cops work for the banks. All those security officers at the banks, those are off-duty cops. They're not going to come over there and you know, upset the money launderers like Jesus did and got killed for. Why would they do that? So you realize that all this stuff is protected. So anyway, I could probably go on for a while yet, but I think I'll close down. See, do you think the City of Rockford wants a parking lot here? Do you think that they would do illegal things in order to get the last property that they want here? This is a historic property. It's from 1870. The guy that built this property, the guy that lived there, also built the original City Hall. His name was John Bennett. Built in This property was built in 1870. I think the old City Hall was built 30 years before that. It was something like 1840. So this is 1840. No, it had to have been later than 1840. This was 1870. So, oh no, it was built 30 years after, 1900. Sorry about that. And do my math here on camera. 1900. This is the old City Hall, which became the jail. Built of the same Indiana limestone as this property where I live. And the one thing you're going to lose when the corporate people get total control of your city, you're going to have no history. All the history here is going to be covered up, just like they did with the Indians, just like they do with the blacks, just like they do with the whites that step out of line, which is most of us. The satanic cartel that is in power, they stop at nothing. They have control of the prosecutors, the attorneys, the judges, the Supreme Courts of the states, of the U.S. You know, we're living in a filthy time. In fact, Dallin Oaks, whose son-in-law owns this property, clerked for Judge Earl Warren, namesake of the Warren Commission. The guys that covered up the assassination of John F. Kennedy by the limo driver. Take a look at it. Dallin Oaks was also up for, now catch this, U.S. Supreme Court nominee under Gerald Ford. He's up for U.S. Supreme Court nominee, never been a judge. He was a Chicago state's attorney while David Kennedy was laundering cocaine, heroin money with the Vatican. You catching this? David Kennedy became Treasury Secretary of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was taken down in Watergate. The Watergate Plaza was owned by David Kennedy's partner, Michele Sindona. If you're following any of this, you're going to see that the cookie cutter cartel that ran Chicago back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s moved a leg to Rockford, Illinois in 1978, the same year I got lured in, the same year Amcor Bank got a free mortgage from Amcor Bank. Did I say Concord Commons got a free, Concord Commons, the public housing, got a free mortgage at Amcor Bank, where in 1995 Jack Ward was the top shareholder. And in 1993, Amcor Bank won a contract with Systematics, which is the money laundering program for the CIA, legal work written by, guess, Vince Foster, Hillary Clinton, and Webster Hubbell. Yeah, Chelsea Clinton's not the only derivative of the Rose Law Firm. Systematics is owned by Jackson Stevens. Jackson Stevens financed Walmart in 1969 in their initial public offering. Now, do you think Walmart is here to help you or to take over America? You better start thinking about some of this stuff, people. Because there's people that's been talking about this for a long, long time. And I'm going to sign out now. Please visit my website, or I should say my blog, rockfordfraud.wordpress.com. And, oh yeah, in the end of Discount Detective, they tear down a historic building to put up fast food. And Mobile gas station just put up a wonderful gas station. I got to say, it's going to be nice to have a gas station down here. And I really have no bitch about it because the properties that were there weren't anything special to speak of anyway. But in my screenplay, The Discount Detective, they tear down this gothic historic property to build a fast food place, which is just tragic. And I'm hoping that I won't have to fight them much longer here because I am getting my newspaper back, the Rock River Times. And I'd like to put some money back in that the cartel has taken out. They took $500,000 out of this property and these two properties, and that is satanic, my friends. They left me. They paid me back the $50,000 which I invested in 1983, from 1978 to 1983. These people are wicked, and if the IRS caught any wind of it, guess what? They wouldn't do anything either. Because the U.S. attorney here in Rockford in the Northern Illinois District, who was just appointed by President Trump, is from Kirtland and Ellis. His name is John Lausch. He's from Kirtland and Ellis law firm in Chicago, CIA boys. One of their boys is you may have heard of him, former UN ambassador under George W. Bush, John Bolton. One of their CIA boys. And they're not shy about it. They name right in their resume in there. Hey, I'm CIA. Woo woo. Lift their skirt. Let's see it. Come on. So Dallin Oaks is a partner over at, I should say, was an attorney over there. And you know what? Those relationships never go away. They're there for a reason. They're called gatekeepers. So John Lausch is the gatekeeper. I called him. I told him all about it. I never got a call back. All right. Next gatekeeper. The local Winnebago County State's attorney. He ain't going to prosecute. In Arkansas in 1987, 2 boys on the tracks were murdered for stumbling on the cocaine drops by the CIA. The guy that murdered him was the prosecutor of the county. So guess what? Cookie cutter. 2 of his henchmen were 2 Arkansas state troopers. This is cookie cutter. This isn't just Rockford, Illinois. This is going on everywhere in the country, people. That's why I say you can listen to the commentators on YouTube and whatnot, and I love them. But you got to realize at some point we got to start getting serious about revealing the local level. That's where the power is. It's like the Boulder Dam. The Boulder Dam is the New World Order, the Federal Reserve. They can cut off the valves. If you're a good guy, if you're standing up against the pedophiles, your money's going to get cut off by that Boulder Dam, by that valve. You're not going to get irrigation. Well, that's what they've done to me here. I've got 3 other properties that I've got other videos on YouTube about.